Gun. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. It's 30th of August, 2021, and we have convened today with Daniel Greenberg and myself, Yoel Kortic, both of us from Ex Libris here in our Jerusalem headquarters, to discuss the controlled digital lending, also known as the Patron Waitlist. Daniel is going to begin with a explanation, an overview, what it's all about, what we're planning on doing with this, and then he's going to turn it over to myself, and I'm going to show the actual setup, the configurations, the workflow, showing how it works in both Alma and Primo, logging myself in and working as two separate patrons. So Daniel, without further ado, go ahead, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Daniel Greenberg. I'm the product manager for Alma Digital. So I'll give a brief, as you all said, a brief overview of controlled digital lending, what it's all about, and really in a nutshell, because it has history actually going back to 2014. We'll just talk about the core principles of what CDL is. So these are some of the topics we'll cover. What is CDL? What is controlled digital lending? Why is it important? How does it serve the libraries? Some of Ex Libris focus areas, both in existing functionality and in the upcoming roadmap. And we'll talk about an advisory group which we already formed and is already ongoing, which of course contributes significantly to the developments. So what is controlled digital lending? CDL allows institutions which have a physical copy on their shelves to create a digital copy of that same book or course resource and so on. So we're talking about digitized content. So it allows institutions to create a digital copy and distribute the digital copy in place of a physical copy. The purpose of this is, of course, as we'll see in the next slide, is to allow much further flexibility in accessing the resource while complying with the copyright laws. From this point of view, Ex Libris, of course, doesn't dictate any copyright issues and so on. It allows flexibility for each institution to make their own decision on how they interpret the copyright limitations, but we do provide that infrastructure. So what are the core principles where the institutions must limit the usage of that digital copy? The first is the need to maintain an own-to-loan ratio. In other words, if they have, for example, 3 copies of the physical book on the shelf, then they are allowed to have 3 copies, either digital or print, on loan at any given time. So if, for example, they decide to suspend the physical copies altogether, then it means that they can have 3 users or patrons simultaneously accessing the digital copy at any given time. So that is the first and main principle, having the own-to-loan ratio, which also means having a strict measure in order to prevent redistribution of the content. So, of course, if the end user can then download the copy, they can then send it to all their friends, all the class, and basically infringe the copyright. So, of course, part of the developments here and the infrastructure which we need to provide is to avoid that redistribution. The second principle, which is a broader principle, is in a way it also relates to the own-to-loan, is the fact that we need to mimic the restraint from physical material in general. So, for example, having one reader at a time. Since only one reader can read a physical book, then that needs to be applied also to the digital. Again, this is up to the institution's interpretation of copyrights. Some comply with it, some don't. So it really is a very broad topic and can be taken to many different directions. We, as a vendor, provide the infrastructure to allow each institution to put their own limits. But these are really the core principles of controlled digital lending. So why is CDL? What are the benefits for the for both the library and the patrons, and why is it important? So first of all, it's another method to make their content, to make the research content, learning, and so on more accessible for a wider community of researchers, especially in the time of, looking at looking at the last couple of years of the pandemic, but also not only also beyond, the fact that institutions want to fulfill their vital function in society by providing easy online access to learning and research material. It of course streamlines the research process much more for those who find it difficult to attend the actual on-premise, the institutions themselves. But not only allowing much more flexibility just to sit down at your desk and access the resources. Having a digital copy also provides what's called a transformative use above the physical copy. So that would be, for example, digital aids. For example, it allows end users to search for full text. It provides audio-visual aids. So all of these that is what's called a transformative use, which provides additional functionality and user experience beyond the physical copies, the print copies. In addition, there is the 20th century problem, which CDL attempts to resolve, where there are older books which are still under copyright, but they are probably unlikely ever to be offered digitally as electronic and other resource methods for providing the material. And therefore, CDL in a way could be the only way of providing a digital copy of this specific resource. And then in addition, there are further benefits that the institution has and the end users have for having a digital copy. One is the fact that it's a quick lending turnaround. Of course, there is no shipments, especially if you're talking about interlibrary loans. Print conservation, if you're talking about historical manuscripts, for example, and so on. Sometimes having them sit on the shelf and just have a digital copy being distributed is preferable. And then ecological awareness, specifically if we're talking about interlibrary loans, then having a digital copy prevents all the shipments and sometimes across sea, which is of course increases the ecological awareness. So these are the three focus areas which we've identified together with the community for CDL, and they are grouped around both the copyright limitations and of course the flows, the institutional library flows. The first being course resources, and here the development has been around Alma Digital, and this is what you all will present to us soon. And here the flow focuses around short-term access. So it's usually where we have institutions who provide equal amount of time for each patron to access a course resource towards an exam, for example, providing access of 2 to 3 hours for every student to a course resource, and managing a patron waitlist. So this is complete. This has been delivered in August. However, we're going to be continuing developing this beyond and having a more automatic synchronization between the digital and the physical. So for example, once the CDL copy is being enabled or activated, then the print copies will be suspended or inactivated. That will be the next step. The second focus area is the general circulation. So really mimicking the experience that patrons and the staff have for longer term fulfillment of physical copies, allowing to do that also with the digital copy and syncing between the digital and the physical fulfillment. So having, again, if there are 3 copies on the shelf, so having 3 copies, either digital or physical, on loan at any given time. And then the last and certainly not the least is interlibrary loans fitting CDL. Both the discussions are ongoing regarding the copyright, the copyright terms here, but allowing at the end to have the CDL copy on loan outside the scope of the institution and in the scope of a consortium or a more general network. So just a few words about the advisory group. They have a great advisory group with representatives from different types of diverse types of institutions, single institutions, consortia, and so on. And we have various working groups around the different areas which you can see here: copyright, circulation, and resource sharing. And we've been doing some very detailed work. We've had several meetings with each one of these groups, and we're building together with them. First of all, it's a knowledge base also for us. We're based on these meetings, we are building, as Ex Libris, we are building the roadmap and tailoring the different flows for the needs of the institutions. From this point of view here, you can see some of the representatives. This is a call out to any of you who are interested, even if you're not prepared at this point to implement it, but you do want to be aware of our plans and understand what it's all about, feel free to reach out and you can join any one of the working groups. So here's some a bit more resources which you'll be able to look online, which Yoel has put together, a live demo on YouTube, controlled digital lending white paper. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. So now I will pass it over to you, Yoel. I think you're hosted. You're muted.
Okay, you should be seeing my screen now and hearing me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is jump in and see the actual CDL, the controlled digital lending, and we're going to do a full flow on it. A full flow being we're going to be a patron who accesses it and then a patron who comes along and requests it. But let's already begin with the setup. And all of the setup is also explained in that PowerPoints, those PowerPoints that Daniel pointed out just a moment ago. If we go here, I'm just going to show you the page, and I'm going to send that out to everybody so you'll have it. We have this on the Knowledge Center. We've got a dedicated page for presentations and documents about digital inventory. And I'm going to send this link right now in the chat so you'll all have it. And on this page right here, this is the general overview and the configuration and workflow. So everybody now has this in their chat. And that will also be, as part of the recording, inside the description on YouTube. We will also put a link to that. So let's begin. The first thing is to define the access rights. So I'm in Alma and I'm coming to the configuration and I'm coming to the fulfillment menu, and under copyright management, we have access rights. Copyright management and access rights. And I'm not going to create a new access right now. I'm going to look at an existing access right. And this will help to explain how the controlled digital lending works. So I've got an access right here called the YLK1 Concurrent User Access Rights Policy. Let's see what we've got here. So we have a name, which is obvious. A description, I've called it one concurrent user at a time can view the digital object. One of the things Daniel mentioned is a own to use policy. Is that the terminology you use, Daniel? Own to use, however
Own
many,
to loan. Yeah.
own to loan, excuse me, own to loan. So if the institution has, for example, 3 copies, then theoretically they can make 3 concurrent users be able to view the digital version of that work, whether it be a book, an article, whatever. If they have 3 physical copies, then at least theoretically, they can allow 3 users concurrently to use it. If they have 1 physical copy, then 1 user would be able to view it at a time, unless they come up with another terms of use, another policy. The number of physical copies owned usually will be the number of concurrent users who can view it. So I've called it one concurrent user at a time can view it. And then we have a denied note and a denied note for override for unregistered users. This is the message that will appear to the user in Primo if he or she tries to access that digital object while somebody else is using it, or while all other concurrent users are already viewing it. So later on, I'm going to say that's the denied note we saw inside the access rights. This is it right here. It says one user is already viewing this digital object. We're going to see where that comes into play soon. This one here is also the message someone will receive, but only if he or she is not logged in. Then we've got the actual rule, and the rule is made of expressions. So I have a rule here. Let's take a look at it. Rather than clicking add rule and adding a rule, we're looking at the rule I've already made. So we have one concurrent user. It's called one concurrent user within 3 minutes. Why? Because when we define the number of concurrent users who can view a digital object, we define both the number of users who can view the object as well as how long they can view it. I've defined here 3 minutes. In the real world, of course, it would be more than 3 minutes. Usually, you got to give the person some time to read it. I did 3 minutes here because I want to show the whole flow, how it works, what happens when the time is up, etc. So 3 minutes is a good amount of time for me to show it, explain it, and then sometimes wait maybe 20, 30 seconds, and then the user is timed out. So we've got one user can view the object and he can view it, or she can view it, or they can view it for 3 minutes. Okay, then we've got another one, registered. So the user has to be registered. Registered equals true. That's pretty clear. When we say registered, that means he's logged in. Then the most important part here. If we want to use this whole functionality that we're talking about today, then we need to check this box, Manage Access Waitlist. And this means use this functionality that we're talking about, the patron waitlist with the controlled digital lending. It's checked. Then we've got a grace period, and we've got also an important part here on the bottom, the allow view and allow download. Now, Daniel mentioned something about allowing download and how we don't want users in this case to download a copy because that would ruin the whole idea of concurrent users and the time that they can view it. If the user downloads a PDF and sends it to his friend, then we're not abiding by the number of copies that I have and how long and how many can view it at the same time. The grace period, by the way, that's the amount of time during which the patron must access the resource. We're going to see the patron gets a message. We're going to see all this live. Patron gets a message when the digital resource becomes available for him or her. And then he or she has this amount of minutes to view the digital object before it goes to the next person in line. Those of you who are familiar with physical item requests in the hold shelf, all of this is going to seem extremely similar, nearly identical. We have patrons coming in and making a request. We have a queue of patrons. There's no physical item, of course, waiting on a shelf. However, there is a digital object waiting to be viewed by the patron, and there is a patron getting a message that it's available. Okay, so in the output, like we said, we're defining allow view. If we don't define that the user is allowed to view it, then everything we've done is purposeless. So we're allowing that he will view the digital object, but he or she cannot download. We don't want, at least in this case, to be able to download. So that is the access right. And in order for this access right to take place, to be used, to have some kind of meaning, it needs to be attributed to a digital resource, or more exact, to the digital representation which contains that file of the digital object. So again, we've defined an access rights policy for the controlled digital lending. Then we have to take this access rights policy and apply it to that, excuse me, to that digital representation. So let's now apply this to a digital representation. Excuse me. So let's go to a digital representation. I'm going to go to digital titles, and I've already got one inside here. We're going to look at one that already has it, and then we'll add to another one. So this is Outrageous and Everyday, the papers of Gloria Steinem. We see that it's digital. And if we go to the representations and we look at this representation, then you'll see here in the access rights, I've already given it this access right. If we were to take another one, let's go another digital title. Let's go to digital here. Okay. Any digital title, and we go into the representation and we edit the representation. Then here we have the access rights, and that's where we can select from a list. We can start typing, and here I can choose any of them, and I apply the access right to the digital representation. We're not going to apply it to that one. We just wanted to see how to apply it, but we did already see that we've applied it to this outrageous and everyday with Gloria Steinem. Outrageous and everyday. And everyday here is one word. We're just going to look one more time there so everything's clear. Inside the representation here, we have applied the access right that we saw a moment ago. So now we have everything ready to show the actual flow. Before I go in and we do the real flow and show how the whole functionality works, I'm going to stop for a moment, look at the chat, and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Does anyone want to ask anything before we go in and start the actual flow? Okay, I don't see any questions coming in. Let's just do a very quick check here. People still hearing me okay? Just say yes. Okay, hands are going up. So that means people hear me. Okay. Actually, only one person raised his or her hand. I assume the other people can hear me as well. Robin, Sandra, Sentang, Tamar Ganor, you hear me? Tiffany? Okay, people hear me. All right, so here we go. For our purposes, I've logged in as two separate users into Primo. Here, I'm logged in as Alicia Hen. On the top right, you see I'm logged in as Alicia. And in Chrome, I'm logged in. Oh, I'm not logged in Chrome. So let me go in Chrome as well. And we're going to log in both of them. Of course, it doesn't matter what browser you use. Okay, I am logged in here. It doesn't matter what browser you use. I'm using two separate browsers because I want to simulate a situation that there are two separate users in two separate locations trying to access the same digital file or the same digital object. So here's Alicia in Primo, and she just searched for Taiwan Library and Information Science, found many results, and then she comes along and searches for outrageous, outrage, EOUS, I believe it is, and everyday, and Steinem. Okay, she performs her search and she sees what she wants. It's available online, and she clicks it and she accesses it, and she starts reading the digital object here, the PDF. There's no download option because if you recall, we defined that you can view it but not download it. Here, there's a picture of an hourglass with a screen tip time remaining. She clicks there and sees she has 2 minutes and 36 seconds left. If she's all done, she could click return early. Along comes, I got to do this within 2 minutes and 30 seconds now because I want to show the conflict. Along comes Ellie Mae Clampett, who is logged in. She searches also for outrageous and everyday in the library catalog. Ooh, I spelled it wrong. But we find it anyway. And she clicks available online. There's the denied note. If you recall, we looked at the denied note previously, and I said we're going to see the denied note later. The one user is already viewing this digital object. Please request to be added to the wait list. She clicked it, and now she's going to click join the wait list. So Ellie Mae Clampett now joined the wait list. If we go look at the mail, which goes to Ellie Mae Clampett, which I'm here now, here she just got a mail. And as you'll see here, it was received 0 seconds ago. Let's let that open, 9:25 a.m. That's my local time. Let's open that up. There it is, 0 minutes ago. It just arrived. And it says you have been added. Let me make that a little larger. You have been added to the wait list for accessing blah, blah, blah. You are currently number 1 in the wait list. Looks extremely similar to what happens in Primo. Excuse me, what happens when there are physical item requests? User requests something and then gets a message. There we go. Alicia here, she's got 3 minutes total. And the reason we did 3 minutes, I stated before, is because I wanted to be able to show the whole process. 1 minute before the expiration time arrives, the user gets a message that the session is going to expire. So the user is getting this message here. When the full expiration will occur, I can turn that off now, and she continues reading. When the expiration will occur, the user who is waiting will get a message that he or she can go and view it. And that user will have the amount of time that we defined inside the access right policy, which we're going to go look at now just to refresh ourselves. Fulfillment, access rights. Here's ours. And this, let's open this up. Here, this grace period, that's the amount of time that Ellie Mae Clampett will have from the time she gets the message until she can view the file. After 10 minutes, she'll no longer have access. It'll go to the next guy. Just like a physical item request. If the user doesn't come to the whole shelf and take it, it goes to the next person. Same thing here. If within 10 minutes, the user doesn't go in and view the digital object, it goes to the next person waiting in line. Here's the denied note that we saw when Ellie Mae Clampett logged in and Alicia was already viewing the file. Let's go see what's going on here. So I'm going to go back into Primo. Session has expired. Okay. By the way, this has now gone to Ellie Mae Clampett. If Alicia tries to renew, then Alicia's going to go into the wait list for after Ellie Mae Clampett. If she says renew, she gets this, that there's too many concurrent users and Alicia can join the wait list again. Let's go see what's going on now with Ellie Mae Clampett. So back into the mail. Now she's got another mail. Item available, outrageous and everyday. What a perfect flow. Everything's running perfectly here. So now she's got her message that it's available. Outrageous and everyday is now available for you. You have 10 minutes because that's the grace period that we just saw defined inside the access right. You have 10 minutes to start viewing the resource before it will be passed on to the next user in the waitlist. Next user in the waitlist just might be Alicia again if Alicia decides to join the waitlist to again view it. Now, Ellie Mae can either access this from within Primo or right here from this link if she's already logged in, and she is already logged in this browser. And now Ellie Mae Clampett can view this, and Ellie Mae Clampett can view it for 3 minutes. So if we click here on the hourglass, we'll see time remaining 2:48, 2:47, because I've been viewing it now for 15 seconds or so. So that's the full flow. Let's see if there's any questions or comments. We made the meeting an hour, even though Daniel and I discussed in advance. It's probably not going to take an hour, but we wanted to leave an hour in case there are questions. If there's any questions or comments, let us know. We can do more examples. We can answer questions. Let's see. I'm looking at the chat, and I don't see any questions or comments. No one has a question or comment. All of that information in such a short amount of time. Everything's clear to everybody? Okay. Okay. People are saying everything's clear. Okay, Daniel, is there anything you want to add before we sign
Just
off?
yeah, maybe just a word on the library open hours.
Oh,
Could
right.
you
We
share
didn't
that?
show anything about the library open hours. So let's pop into the access rights policy again and point that part out. Thanks for pointing that out, Daniel. So I'll get out of here and we'll go back into this one from the beginning. And we'll edit the rule. And we'll scroll down. So go ahead, Daniel. We've got this option here. Go ahead, Daniel.
Right. So, I mean, we actually won't use the terminology library open hours because it isn't directly related to the library open hours, which can also be configured in Alma. This allows limiting the waitlist to specific hours, which means that you can define that, for example, between 8 o'clock in the evening till 8 o'clock in the morning, the waitlist will be suspended. Which is mainly for fairness for the patrons. If a patron, for example, registers in the middle of the day for a resource, but the resource only becomes available in the middle of the night, then we don't want them to miss their slot because they were sleeping. So basically, it's suspended, and the grace period will start only from the open hour or whatever hour you define here, 8 o'clock in the morning. So they won't actually lose out. And what happens in between that 8 o'clock and 8 o'clock? Then the resource will continue being accessible, but as a sort of first come, first serve basis. So we will continue maintaining the own-to-known ratio, but just without a wait list.
Okay, here's another one that came in, Daniel. Can we view the wait list queue or know how many are in the queue?
You can't view the waitlist queue. That is something which we might consider for the roadmap. You can, when you just go into the registration page, you can see how many there are currently in the queue.
Okay, then we've got, can we view analytics or a patron's loan record who has accessed the CDL loan? To the best of my knowledge, no, but Daniel, you want to say anything about that? I want me to reread it.
Yeah, no, there isn't something in particular now. That's certainly something which we can consider too.
Okay, somebody else asks, is there back-to-back requesting limit? Oh, someone trying to hack the system, you mean? Daniel, there's no requesting limit, is there?
No, there's no requesting
No,
limit
no
currently.
requesting limit. Can you set the, see, now the questions are coming in. Can you set the access rights up for specific groups of users, i.e. students from a specific unit or specific staff?
So yes, I mean, you can continue using the access right policies which you've had up to now and combine them with the concurrent users. So if up to now you could limit to, for example, an IP range or user groups and so on. So you can add one parameter limiting to user group and another parameter limiting the number of concurrent users.
So if that, let's just show a little example here. So I could take this one, which I'm looking at right now, and I could say add parameter, and that parameter could be user group, and then I could limit it to a is in list, and then choose whichever user groups I want to include. So it can be limited by anything which we've got here, because these are the rules, the expressions, excuse me, in the rule. Let's see if there's any more there. Okay, I don't see any more coming in. Any other questions before we sign off? Boaz, no questions this morning? Okay, so we'll be posting the recording of this. And thanks everybody for joining, and we hope to see you in all our future sessions. Have a nice day.